Well, that was one hell of a game 4, but game 5 is just around the corner. It's pivotal. It's huge. It can set the stage for the Warriors closing out this series. I can't even talk today. Kylen Mills and I are going to break down what's going on with De'Aaron Fox's finger. Some interesting comments from Draymond Green about coming off the bench. And Joga. That's on the docket for today. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter for now at Dog Surf Roadshow. Kylen, great to see you. Your immediate reaction, we're going to play some sound in a moment here, but your immediate reaction to the news that during game 4, and it was not even during live action, that De'Aaron Fox apparently clipped his finger somewhere on Kevon Looney's hands of steel and broke the tip of his index finger, a crucial injury given it's on his shooting hand. Your reaction to that?
I mean, I was shocked when I heard that news yesterday, Cyrus. By the way, are you just having one of those days that you're tongue-tied? Because literally, as someone who works in broadcast, like that happens to me all the time. So like, don't feel bad about it. Like, it's just, I used to have that randomly, especially when I get bad allergies. I feel like my head, so anyways, I feel your pain.
It doesn't happen often. Usually if it
good.
happens, it's like a quick little, it happens a couple times, right? It's like a sequence. Like you don't just shake it off firsthand. Yeah, I never realized it until I start.
You rarely get tongue-tied ever. Like
I
I would get it worse. Like I said, just being in broadcasting and TV every day, like that would happen to me all the time. I have bad allergies too, so I feel like I would just get like gunky in my head and I would have a hard time getting words out. So anyways, don't worry about it.
All right.
In terms of De'Aaron Fox's injury, I was surprised when I heard that yesterday, but honestly, my initial thought was skepticism. Like I was immediately thinking I am very skeptical that De'Aaron Fox is actually going to sit out game 5. Their entire season rests on this game. And given that it was like the very end of his index finger, I figured that's got to be an area that could be splinted, that could possibly be played through, an injury that could possibly be played through. And when I started doing research, it appeared that way. A lot of it does depend on where the break is at in the finger to determine exactly, how you treat it, how it's splinted, that kind of thing. But hearing that it was towards the end and towards a fingertip, I thought, I highly doubt. I mean, I honestly thought there's no way, but I guess there would have been a small chance, but I highly doubted that he wasn't going to play. So the news that he now is likely to play in game 5 isn't a huge shock to me, just because the entire season rests on this. I was going to be very shocked if he didn't play. And I also wonder some of the reports about him being doubtful, if that was gamesmanship. We saw, I think, some of that with Domantas Sabonis's sternum contusion, where he was initially reported as doubtful. So to me, it doesn't come as a huge surprise that now De'Aaron Fox is apparently going to play in game 5.
Yeah, you can't legally, by NBA rules, falsify an injury report. It's a lot easier to list Sabonis as doubtful with a bruise, right? Because bruises are damn near impossible to truly prove without a detailed MRI scan. A broken finger, an X-ray can confirm that. So he clearly has the injury. Like
yes,
again,
100%. I'm not saying he didn't. That's not what I was getting at.
Well,
I'm saying whether or not he'd play is kind of questionable.
Well, what I'm saying is I think Sabonis was blatantly exaggerating that quote-unquote sternum injury, whatever the hell was going on there. That was blatant gamesmanship because I pointed out that they don't take X-rays on torso bruises, right? That's not a thing. An X-ray wouldn't show a thing. So that was blatant gamesmanship, them leaking that information to Adrian Wojnarowski. I think that played a factor. Again, going back to gamesmanship for Draymond being suspended for game 3, that was blatant and it was borderline unethical. in this case, I mean, what are you going to do, right? I mean, it's a broken finger. I agree with you. There's no chance in hell he's going to sit out. I want to share this clip. I just saw this a moment ago. I think you retweeted it. This is one of our media colleagues. Anthony Slater tweeted this out. This was, I believe, following practice today at the Sacramento Kings facility. And here is De'Aaron Fox talking. This is the first time I believe we've heard sound from him since the injury following post-game when it wasn't revealed yet, of De'Aaron Fox talking about his status for Game 5.
You think you're going to be able to
go? Most likely, yeah. I mean, for me right now, it's just the tolerance on like the pad of my finger, making sure I can shoot the ball.
How different was shooting feeling with that thing on?
As we got going, as the paint started going away, so I got to do my normal shot. So I think I'll be good.
What was the ball handling with that? Is that?
The ball handling action was fine. Like as soon as I got out, dribbling and passing was fine. So for me, the most important thing was could I shoot as painfully as possible.
When did you actually injure?
I think it was like halfway through the fourth. It was one of the plays I was driving in. Jordan and Wiggs both swung at it. That's when I first felt it.
How was the rest of the game after that?
Oh, it was fine. I mean, I think Draymond just did a good job defensively.
So it wasn't the play when Looney got you on the finger after?
No, I think it had already happened, but I think that's when I actually felt it. But other than that, I mean, adrenaline was pumping, so I was hyped the rest of the game. After the game, it really started to swell up, and I started to feel it.
Have they told you if this is mallet finger, jersey finger, like what?
I don't even know. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that means.
Have they talked about surgery, whether that's ruled in or?
I mean, like I have to play with protection on it. Like if I don't play with the protection and it does get hit, then I'll probably have to get like a screw in it. So. I mean, what I'm wearing, like, I think the big thing for me was, could I feel the pad of my finger? Like, you know, if you're playing basketball, you're throwing a ball, like, you want to be able to feel the ball on your finger. So that was a big thing for me. And, I mean, it's protecting what it needs to protect. So it's been fine.
You took about 40 shots out there. How did?
All right, I guess it stops there. That was interesting. That's the most I've learned. I learned a lot from that. I honestly, of all the things I heard and saw right there, the one thing that stuck out the most to me was seeing what he's going to have to play with in Game 5. That is like, look, when you're shooting a basketball, it's either your index finger or your middle finger. One of those two, maybe both, have equal importance, but those are vital for your shot, regardless of how comfortable he is. A broken finger, he's going to feel it. A lot of people were saying, well, you know, if he broke it in the game and he was fine, he just admitted there he didn't actually feel it till the contact with Looney, even though it happened before then. It was a play where Wiggins and Poole swiped at it. You're obviously not going to feel it in the game. You have so much adrenaline running. That's a type of injury you're going to start feeling as time goes on and it starts swelling. Look, you can have whatever opinions you want, and Kylen, I'd love to hear yours. But for anyone who has an opinion that says he's going to be fine, the injury's not going to affect him, I'm going to call BS on that from initial impressions. He's going to act like he's fine. He's going to give it everything he's got because De'Aaron Fox is a baller. I have so much respect for him, especially after the series. Again, in our Locked On Awards, I put him number 5 for MVP. I respect him. I think he's a tremendous player. I also think this will affect him. Your thoughts?
I mean, I think what you said is spot on, that De'Aaron Fox is going to do everything possible to play through the injury. I think he's going to give it all he's got. He's an absolute gamer. He's a baller. He's a tough player. And I think he's going to try his best to play through any type of pain. Yeah. However, a great point that you mentioned is that he was able to finish out that Game 4 because of the adrenaline pumping. And I've been in that situation as someone who's played college athletics and played beyond the college game, that, you know, I've had injuries happen in game where you literally do not feel it until after the game. I know people who have continued playing on a torn ACL, torn meniscus, specifically I played soccer, and people who've dealt with serious knee injuries and they don't necessarily realize it because it is that adrenaline pumping in your system. Your body is doing what it needs to protect itself. in that moment. And then it's after the fact when maybe, the adrenaline, the cortisol level drops that you suddenly feel that injury. Now, I do think adrenaline's going to be a factor again in game 5, that he will pump himself up. His body gets going. It's going to do everything possible to protect him from feeling that injury. I still think it could be a factor. Absolutely. I mean, you have a broken finger and it's
Yeah.
on your shooting hand. I
Exactly.
just don't see how you don't feel that at all. So
Totally.
I wouldn't be surprised if it affects him a little bit, but I still am expecting De'Aaron Fox to come out swinging. I expect him to come out punching because I expect this Kings team to be really fired up for game 5. They dropped 2 back-to-back. I just don't think there's going to be any indications that De'Aaron Fox is going to hold back because of the injury at all. I also think that there is still some gamesmanship that's being played by the Sacramento Kings. I want to be clear because, we pointed it out, and I think you were spot on with the Sabonis injury. I do think the timing of all that and what that being released in regards to the x-ray was all, very strategic. And, I'm not knocking the Kings for any of that either. I know some people are super pissed off, but at the end of the day, it's the NBA playoffs. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And he did undergo an x-ray. I believe that, but typically an x-ray is to eliminate a break. And I think that the way they released that information, the wording, it was designed to make it sound more serious. And the league came out and said that was a factor in their decision-making in suspending Draymond Green. The fact that Sabonis was diagnosed with a contusion, didn't undergo a series of testing, and was listed as doubtful. The league indicated that was a factor. I don't think it was the biggest factor, but it was a factor. So, I think the Kings are playing the game. And do I think they're playing the game again? I do a little bit. I think De'Aaron Fox has known, and I think he's probably in his own head decided that I'm going to go no matter what. And I think some of the, I think it is some gamesmanship in terms of, you don't want to let that onto the opponent right off the bat. You want to, put some question in the opponent's mind in terms of how they're game planning, how they're preparing, what to expect coming up in game 5. And, I think that that's absolutely what any team would do. So again, not knocking the Kings, but I think there is a little bit of gamesmanship in terms of exactly what they're going to release about De'Aaron Fox's injury, how they're going to phrase it, and the way that they're going to shape the conversation going into game 5. I think the Warriors should be ready for the Kings to throw the kitchen sink at them in game 5. Expect this team to be a full go. Prepare as though De'Aaron Fox is going to come out and be as electric as he has been throughout the series.
Absolutely. B do have 2012 rights. Don't waste the whole episode talking about this minor injury. One of my huge peeves is people telling me how I should do things. So just for that, we're going to spend the whole show talking about the injury. Never mind the fact you're being a total condescending prick. I'm kidding about the first part. We're not going to talk about the injury, but he is a total condescending prick. But no, we have a lot of other things to talk about. But don't come into the chat and tell us what to talk about. That's an absolute massive peeve of mine. But when we come back, we also got to talk about Draymond Green. He had some interesting comments about what led to him coming off the bench in Game 4. It was fascinating. I think it really revealed a lot about who he is as a person, simply because a lot of people have this idea of him as being just arrogant, as being like an a-hole sometimes. I don't agree with that. I just think he is a hyper competitor. And I respect that so much about him. I'm gonna get into what I'm talking about in just a moment after we talk about one of our 2 sponsors for this timeout here, and that is Gametime. And this is, again, every time I read this Gametime read, Kylen, all I think about is Warriors fans, Dub Nation, using the Gametime app, buy tickets, invade Cow Country, go into the capital of California, invade Golden One Center, and make some damn noise to counter those cowbells and all the other ridiculous utterances I'm hearing from Kings fans in that crowd. Make some noise, Dub Nation. Use the Gametime app. Scan that code down there. Go to the website. Download the app, because Gametime is where you can find tickets for all sorts of events, whether it's sporting events, whether it's concerts, whatever you can buy tickets for. Gametime is the app for you. And one of the best parts about Gametime, if you buy a ticket from Gametime and then you find another set of tickets in the same row and section that's cheaper, they will refund the difference. That is called the guarantee, folks. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And today's also brought to you by FanDuel. Where is that overlay? The FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back. It is warming up out there, folks. In fact, I'm cooking in this room that has no AC, that has no windows. And there's no better place, though, for baseball to get in on the Major League Baseball action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with the no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance. Get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day, everydayers. Tomorrow on the show, it's Game 5. So we'll be live post-game immediately following the game. And Kylen will find out sometime soon when you'll be on for your final show of the week. But follow the program on Twitter as well at Locked On Dubs. Follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms, whether it's Twitter, whether it's TikTok, Instagram at Kylen Mills. Let's talk about Draymond Green real fast here. Draymond has a podcast of his own. What other Kylen? I've never heard you express an opinion on this. I'm curious to know how you feel. Do you care that he has a podcast of his own that he goes to and records episodes during the playoffs? Like, do you care that he does that?
So I don't mind Draymond Green having a podcast. I think everyone's got to have an outlet. They've got to have something that, helps give them a break when they're off the court. However, he basically centers his entire podcast on his reactions to basketball. So I don't know how much of an outlet it is or a way to get away in terms of hobbies, because he's still talking about the sport. I personally, after like a bad playoff loss, I prefer not to see a podcast, I would rather see more focus. I don't know, just coming from my background also as an athlete, like I know how tough it is to try to, recover and mentally lock in when you're coming with a loss or you're coming off a loss or dealing with a loss. And I feel like it does require a lot of mental fortitude to try to, really focus and hone in on what areas of the game you need to improve on. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with the podcast. I don't have a problem with Draymond Green putting his opinions out there. I think a lot of people are sensitive. People get so angry about, little things that he says that I think are blown way out of proportion in the big picture. But I do get some of the criticism when the team is, for example, losing a playoff series or drops a playoff game, if he's podcasting right before or after. I understand. I understand the criticism. I personally don't have a big problem with it. And I think that, he gets a lot of scrutiny because of his strong opinions, but, I think he's entitled to it.
Absolutely. And I haven't seen it yet, cost the team, as long as it's not distracting.
They won the championship last year. People were complaining, People were yakking, and they won. So, at the end of the day, I don't think you can criticize the guy for his game day or playoff routine if they win it all. If they end up losing a series, then, fair enough. But I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a big problem with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And especially when he's like recording these like in his hotel room, following a game, like, it's not, and not to mention, he's one of the brightest players in the game. Again, They won a title last year. I'm totally with you. Well, here is Draymond on his podcast talking about the decision that led to him coming off the bench for the first time in, I think, like 10 years. So here's Dre.
Coming into this game, I came off the bench. I went to Coach Kerr after the game. I told him right then, I'm like, yo, Coach, if I need to come off the bench, like, fine. Like, I'll come off the bench, no problem. And he's like, oh. Like, it almost caught him by surprise. Like, he's like, oh. The one thing that I didn't want to happen was, like, I come back and everybody's like, oh, this worked. Well, Loon comes out the starting lineup. That's bullshit. Like, that's bullshit. You're an awful fucking teammate if that's what you think should happen. Looney just had 20 rebounds, 9 assists, dominated the game. You don't then go to him and say, hey, your reward is to come out of the starting lineup. That's, as a leader of a team, that's how you lose guys. Coach called me a day later and said, all right, this is what we're doing. But you haven't come off the bench in 9 years. How are you in a playoff game? How are you going to feel about that? I said, well, Coach, Number one, who fucking cares? Who cares how I feel about that? Doesn't matter. Feelings don't matter. You don't have time for feelings in the playoffs. You get caught in your feelings, you get caught on the boat to Cancun. Number two, I feel great. I'm fine. I'll be ready to go when it's time for me to go in. Big question is, do you keep coming off the bench? I don't know. I started the second half. But what I will tell you is I don't care. Most important thing to me and to guys that has played here, which is why we've won championships, is winning.
There you go. That was Dre. I love him. Your reaction to what he just said there.
So Draymond addressed this also in post-game after Game 4, and Steve Kerr brought it up as well, that Draymond Green had driven to Chase Center and specifically gone up and set up a meeting with Steve Kerr to tell him, I want to come off the bench in Game 4. I mean, this was following Game 3. I mean, after the Game 3 win, that he went up and talked to Steve Kerr and, drove all the way to Chase Center to have that conversation face-to-face. Personally, I think it's a great sign of leadership, and I think it's a great sign of the Warriors culture that you have stars, superstars who are Hall of Famers, have won 4 championships, multiple time All-Stars like Draymond Green, and then also Steph Curry, one of the greatest players in the game, who are willing to come off the bench in playoff series. Because let's not forget, one season ago, Steph Curry did exactly that and said, coming back from an injury, I'm willing to come in off the bench. I think that, and then Andrew Wiggins as well, more recently, in his return from his long absence due to a family issue. So I think it speaks greatly to the type of culture and the team environment that the Golden State Warriors have built when you do have stars who are willing to put their egos aside to do what's best for the team. And that's what makes championship caliber rosters and teams and environments, because there's no room for egos when it comes to championships. And I think Draymond was spot on that there's no room for feelings and is this going to hurt my ego? Is this going to hurt my sense of pride? You don't have room for any of that when you're a team going after a championship. Everyone has to be on the same page in doing whatever it takes to help the team win. And that has to start from the top down. And when you have a Steph Curry who's willing to come in off the bench, that sets the tone and sets the example for the rest of the team. What Draymond Green did here was the exact same thing. And I think he was spot on too, in regards to someone mentioning Kevon Looney coming in off the bench. Loon has been so solid this series. The rebounding performances he's been putting up are incredible. How do you turn around and respond with Looney? Now you got to come in off the bench for a guy who got suspended. I think it's the right message to send, to keep Kevon Looney in the lineup and to have Draymond Green coming off the bench. And I also think there's something to be said about the Warriors trying to carry the momentum from Game 3 into Game 4, and what's not broken, don't fix it, or whatever the phrase is. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yes,
I think
yeah.
that there is absolutely something to be said for that. So I get Draymond Green, I get his point. I think it shows good leadership, the fact that he is willing to put himself aside. Now, I still wish he would have not gotten suspended. And, you can go back to that whole issue of him keeping his emotions in check and trying to do what's best for the team in terms of not getting so heated and not putting himself in situations where he's getting technicals and possibly putting himself into a situation where he could get suspended. Sure, there's some room for growth there. But in terms of this situation specifically, I think he did the right thing in saying, hey, I want to come off the bench. I'm willing to come off the bench. Let me do whatever it takes to help the team win.
Absolutely. It's not about, in my opinion, it's not about who starts games, it's about who finishes. And I'm really happy that Draymond was cognizant of that. I've never seen Draymond as someone who has a huge ego. I just think he's incredibly competitive. He wants to win. He's also a trash talker. That's fun for him. I totally get that part too. So yeah, kudos to Dre for coming up with the idea, for not having this massive, bloated ego that factors into a lot of decisions that a lot of players, coaches have to take into consideration for. When we come back to finish up the show, I want to talk about just how important, culturally speaking, the Golden State Warriors are, meaning TV ratings. How many people actually watch when it's the Warriors versus someone else, and why that should be taken into consideration when these refs are routinely screwing over the Warriors. And so I'm going to touch on that and explain more in just a minute. I also looked at the line, courtesy of the FanDuel Sportsbook for Game 5. Shocked at that. And
I haven't seen it yet. I'm so excited.
It's crazy. And also why Kevon Looney has become such a durable player. There is a potential answer for that. We'll get into all that and so much more. Got to give some love to PrizePicks, who's now slowly become one of our longtime sponsors. And I love that simply because It's fun. The entire premise, you've heard me talk about it. If you're a brand new viewer or listener to the show, it's simple. It's over-unders on individual players. And it doesn't just have to be the NBA. It could be one of your favorite players on the San Jose Earthquakes, for example, a team that Kylen Mills covers. And you can watch all that coverage on Apple TV, which is phenomenal. Congrats, Kylen. And it's just 2 players minimum, 6 players max. And if the over-unders are predicted accurately, meaning, for example, Stephen Curry usually in this series, his over-under against the Kings is 29.5 for points. And you have to decide, is he going to score more than that or less than that? And if he scores more and you pick the over, you got one of the 2 down. And if the other one, maybe it's your favorite soccer player, maybe it's your favorite baseball player, maybe it's another basketball player, whatever it is, it's OUs on different categories, and you have a chance to win big money. It's awesome, and it's legal here in California, if you're in California. So download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. And if you don't have $100, you only got 50, 25, whatever it is, they will match that first-time deposit. But don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms, including Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Kylen Mills. And make sure to follow the program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. That's where we post all of our show times, guests, and so forth. So I saw some stats come out regarding the TV and just the general digital downloads and views, the total number of people watching the Warriors in this playoff series. And it's fascinating that Game 4 of the Warriors and the Kings had an average audience of 7.5 million people. It peaked at 10.4 million, which is the highest watched playoff game in 21 years. That's incredible. It just goes to show again, the Golden State Warriors, if you're looking at the NBA as a business, which is what it is, they are one of your biggest ticket items. And again, when you're averaging 7.5 million of viewers, and that's the highest number in over 10 years. Your peak audience is over 10 mil. It blows my mind that a team in the Golden State Warriors, I really hate bitching about this, but it's so obvious that there is something going on here that is just not right. And a lot of these calls, all right, and Kylen, let me know you're less emotionally invested in the Warriors than I am. So I'd love your thoughts on this. But a lot of these calls are 50-50 calls, right? It's like a lot of these calls especially against the Warriors, are not obvious calls. These are ticky-tack calls, whether it's a foul on a player of the Golden State Warriors, whether it's a foul on the Kings, whether they committed a foul on a Warriors player. Most of these calls are very subjective. Most of these calls are very last minute. And what I've been advocating for a long time is when a team like the Warriors, who has won 4 titles in 8 years, who has won 6 Western Conference titles in 8 years, who have personified greatness. You heard we played the soundbite a week or two ago about Draymond and Kevon Looney in a game, trying to persuade the officials that, look, Stephen Curry, 4-time champion, 2-time MVP. Why is he not getting calls? When it comes to 50-50 calls like that, when it comes to the benefit of the doubt, it blows my mind that the Warriors rarely win those calls. They're the biggest ticket draw. They've shown they know the game better than anyone else because they win more often than anyone else. Yet I don't see at all any sign that the Warriors get the benefit. And the evidence is routinely in free throw attempts. The evidence is in Stephen Curry getting hammered a lot and not getting foul calls. And it blows my mind. Do you have an opinion on this, Kylen?
So, first of all, Bruce Morrow pointed out in the chat, what do you mean Kylen's not invested in this? So, I am invested, but my perspective doesn't come from being a lifelong fan of the Warriors. It
Yeah.
comes from someone who moved here 3, 4 years ago, started covering the team. So, I have a little bit more of an objective journalistic approach. I am very invested. I love covering this team. I absolutely have loved getting to know Dub Nation and being a part of this whole thing and the community that is created by the Warriors. So just want to make that clear. I am very invested, but my perspective is different of that who is a longtime fan or who's grown up as a fan of the team. So that's where I try to bring in a little bit more of a level-headed approach to the podcast. In terms of the referees, I think the Warriors, not just in the series, all season, every single season I've covered them the last 3 to 4 years, they don't get the benefit of the doubt on any calls. Specifically, Steph Curry. And there are stats and numbers that go to show that as well. I don't have graphs offhand, but there are ones that you can look up and find that Steph Curry does not get the same calls as other players in the league. And he very rarely gets the benefit of the doubt on calls specifically, which I think is fascinating and interesting. So I think there's something to be said for the fact that the Warriors have not gotten, their fair share of calls. They don't typically get the benefit of the doubt. I do think the officiating in general, though, like big picture, hasn't been great in the playoffs in its entirety. And my main thing is I just don't think the officiating should interfere with the entertainment value and the ability of the players to compete in the game. And I think that, like, for example, Draymond Green suspension, maybe a little bit too harsh in a situation where this is going to affect possibly, the level of play and the entertainment value for fans and the competitive nature of the series to not have him play in game 3. So like that's a situation where I feel like, maybe the ejection is enough and you let the guys just play in game 4. I don't think what he did was egregious enough to warrant a suspension. And to me, I understand, potentially that the league is sick of Draymond Green. This is something that he has a history in terms of getting technicals and ejections. But to me, when you're taking away from the game that is being played right now, that's an unfortunate situation. And I feel like there have been times where we've seen officials make calls where it's taking away from the product that you're seeing on the court. So to me, that's where the line has to be drawn. But it's not just for the Warriors. In other series, I think there have been some calls, against the Kings as well. I mean, to me, that's just like I said, the line in the sand needs to be, the whistles that are being blown should not take away from the product, the competitiveness, and the value of the game that we're watching. So, I hope that we see some improvements throughout the rest of the playoffs. I'm excited for the rest of the series, and I don't want to spend any more time talking about this just because I think it's unfortunate when talking about the officials
Yeah.
takes away from how awesome these series have been. And we've seen some crazy series. Like this one between the Warriors and Kings has been awesome. You look across even in the East and the West had so much parity this season. In the East, some of these series are shocking me. Like the Miami Heat being up 3-1, Jimmy Butler dropping 56 and they're leading the Bucks. Like didn't see that coming. Didn't see the Knicks' strong performance coming. And I just think this playoffs has been one to remember. And it's unfortunate when you have to have conversations about the officiating because, there is the possibility that it's taking away from any of these series and the greatness that we've seen. I personally have been entertained. I don't know about you, but I
Oh
think
yeah,
across
hell
the
yeah.
NBA, these have been awesome. And you mentioned the numbers, the huge numbers the Warriors and Kings have pulled in. One that speaks to the pull of Steph Curry. People want to watch him. He's one of the most electric and best players in the game. And when anyone tries to make an argument that he's not the face of the league, I don't want to hear any of it. And, when you look at the numbers in viewership, there you have it. People want to watch Steph Curry play. He is electric. He is one of the greatest players of all time, the greatest shooter of all time, I would argue. And the Warriors play an incredibly fun and exciting brand of basketball that people want to watch. They've done an excellent job throughout this dynasty as well making the Warriors a name that is known across the nation. People know what they get when they're going to watch the Warriors. The branding is clear and they're a team that people want to watch. And I think that speaks to Steph Curry and then also the way the organization has built themselves up, the brand of basketball they play. And, if you want to try to argue that Steph Curry isn't the face of the league, I don't want to hear about it. He absolutely is.
I wholeheartedly agree. And speaking of him being the face of the league, part of the reason why I bring this up, I could bring this up every day as a Warriors fan because that's how I feel. But I haven't brought this up in months, might even been a year. I just feel like enough's enough. And I don't want Steph to get injured. That's first and foremost. I feel like the less refs blow that whistle when Steph's getting hammered, the more likely he's going to get hammered so hard he's going to get knocked out of a game. I don't want to see that. Andrew Fitzgerald writes, "Why do you want the Warriors to benefit? It should go both ways." I want fairness. All I'm saying is, if it's a close call where it could go either way, I feel like the Warriors have earned the benefit of the doubt to get a few more whistles called on their behalf. I would much prefer the refs just shut up. I don't want them to be a story at all. I hate that they're the story. By the way, the Warriors, I didn't mention this yet. The FanDuel Sportsbook lists them as 2-point favorites in Game 5 in Sacramento, which is shocking to me. G. Martinez writes, he looked up every ref stat for every game. Scott Foster, who reportedly, I'm not confirming this, I'm just going off the chat, if he's calling the game, he's 10-0 for home dogs against the spread, which is what the Kings are. So any thoughts, Kylen, on the Warriors being 2-point favorites in Game 5 at Golden One Center?
I think that's interesting. I think that's fascinating. The way the Warriors have performed on the road, I honestly don't know how this game is going to go. Like, that's my personal prediction. I would love to see the Warriors come out, be super decisive and be super aggressive, play smart, take care of the basketball early. That's one of my keys to the game. I'd love to see them jump on the Kings. And I think if they instill a little bit of doubt and really try to crack that confidence the Kings had going into the series, if the Warriors take Game 5, they take Game 6. And I think that is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, no cap. I'm not advocating for this. He writes, need Dre to swipe at Fox's hand. I'm not condoning that. But the reason why I even highlight it is because you better believe the Warriors are aware. And oops, I accidentally hit his hand. That happens routinely. Broken, even if it's just a microfracture. If you break a bone, have you ever broken bones, Kylen?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how badly those hurt. Like, it's no joke. It's no joke. A broken bone, you feel it. I don't care how tough De'Aaron Fox is. I know they're going to put him on painkillers and do whatever it takes to make him feel that as minimally as possible. That's a broken bone on the tip of his shooting hand. He's going to feel it when that thing makes contact with opposing players. And you better believe the Warriors are aware of that. Side note, the hand is part of the ball. Technically not a foul if you make contact with the hand. So yeah, that's part of the game. I do think you're going to see that. What's your prediction for Game 5, Kylen? It's a huge game. I mean, the De'Aaron Fox injury certainly sways things a little bit. What do you think is going to happen?
So I think it's going to go one of two ways. And I'm really, really struggling with a prediction on this game because I just do not know. The Warriors have been so inconsistent on the road this season. Like, it's so hard to predict. I want to say that I think the champion mindset of this group is going to come out in Game 5. The Warriors are going to do exactly what I said. They're going to come out swinging. They're going to take Game 5, and that I think leads to taking Game 6. Interesting. Bruce is anticipating Warriors blowout. I don't know about a blowout. Every single game of this series has been so competitive and so fun to watch. I think the Warriors could squeak out a victory. That's going to be my official prediction is Warriors win Game 5. But I want to be clear, this could go either way. The Warriors have been really put to the test by the Sacramento Kings. I've been so impressed by the way this young group in the Kings has come out and been able to compete and held their composure throughout a playoff series. The first one, many of these players are experiencing, and the first one for the franchise in a very, very long time. This is not going to be easy. The Warriors have to play good basketball. It's going to be key they take care of the ball. It's going to be key that they, come out and rebound. They battle on the boards, which they did well in games 3 and 4, keeping them in the game because when they give up those second chance points, they've struggled. Playing good defense. We've talked about it all season. They've got to figure out how to do it on the road because even with a broken finger, De'Aaron Fox is so dangerous. And we've seen throughout the series, it's not just him. They have other players who can score. So the Warriors are going to have to be really sound defensively, take care of the basketball, fight on the boards, and then give Steph Curry the ball. That was one of my number one things from Game 4. In the first half, I don't think Curry had enough shots. So I want to see them really lean into Curry early. And, we'll see what happens. I'm excited. But I'm going to go with the Warriors come out. They're champions. They know how to deliver in these critical games. It doesn't get more critical than this Game 5.
Absolutely. I believe we both predicted Warriors in 6. Our prediction will come to fruition if the Warriors win Game 5. I can't emphasize this enough. Steve Kerr needs to be a little flexible with his rotations. JaMychal Green, there was one game that was not close, and that was Game 3. And the Warriors dominated that game. They didn't have Draymond Green. They didn't have Gary Payton II. They dominated because they played 3 players that they have not been playing the rest of the series who are big, who are athletic, who are long, and who give the Kings problems. And the players I'm referring to is JaMychal Green, who can easily handle Alex Len. If Alex Len plays 10 minutes, JaMychal Green should play 10 minutes. It matches up and it neutralizes the effectiveness of a 7-footer out there blocking shots, grabbing rebounds, making life difficult for the Warriors. So if JaMychal Green gets a run, if Moses Moody gets a run, he only got, 5 minutes in game 4, made a huge 3. He's long. He affects the defense. One thing we didn't get to today was yoga, which is a type of yoga that Kevon Looney and Moody are practicing. And New York Times wrote a great piece on it. Our friend Raymond Ritter posted it on his Twitter account. And I didn't realize Moody was also participating in that, which I think also helps in terms of athleticism. And I know you and I disagree on Kuminga, and that's okay. But again, the more Kuminga plays, the better things happen. I mean, it's just every statistic shows that when he plays, good things happen. They do. It's just so I as long as they win, I could care less. You're never going to hear me complain if they don't win, or at least most of the time. I still thought Kuminga should have played in game 4 more. But I do think at a minimum, get some more length out there, get some more athleticism out there, match the Kings in the one advantage they have in the series, which is size. You have the personnel to match that. And I think if the Warriors do that, they're going to take care of business. If they don't, they still could win, but it's going to be a tight, really close, really stressful game. So that's how I feel about that. Any final words? I know we went a little long, but I think we'll be okay, Kylen. Any last thoughts?
Nope, I'm good. We got to wrap it up. This is going to be a fun one, and we'll have some post-game reaction after games 5 and 6.
Absolutely. So there you go. So we'll be back at it tomorrow night. Game 5 post-game. If the Warriors win, they'll be set up for a game 6 series clincher in Chase. Let's hope that's a scenario. I don't want to see a game 7. Game 7 scare the ever-living bejesus out of me, just because anything could happen. So, Kylen, oh, shoot, you're late. I'm so sorry. I did not look at the clock. Kylen, go. We got to go. Thank you, everyone. Take care. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Later.